Shakespeare can be intimidating for artists, for audiences. People often put Shakespeare on a pedestal or try to dumb it down. We're doing neither. We're taking these texts that still resonate in so many ways and handing them to a diverse set of today's most exciting playwrights and saying, what would you do? How would you translate this into contemporary English verse from your perspective, using your knowledge and your artistry? We're here to decolonize and democratize Shakespeare because these stories are for everyone. Visit playonshakespeare.org to find a modern verse translation of Shakespeare and get the playwright back in the room.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite, obey your thirst.
Hello, you are listening to a brand new episode of Whispers in the Wings, and I'm so excited to be back in your ears for the last episode of 2025. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible relaunch, season 3 of the podcast. It's been absolutely incredible connecting with our guests, as well as reconnecting with you, the listener. Now, I've always talked about the importance as a stage manager of having an understanding of the other departments that come within theatre. You don't necessarily need to understand the full detail, but having basic knowledge of lighting, sound, automation, being able to sew, being able to repair things, build things is always really helpful because you never know what skills you're going to need to bring to different productions. If you're working in the commercial world, perhaps you're not going to need to use them, but if you move into that indie theatre making world, definitely those skills are going to come in hand. And having a basic understanding of as much as you can within the industry makes you a better practitioner, it makes you a better collaborator, and allows you to be part of the problem solving while showing your experience within the industry. Now, we all know that being multidisciplined within the arts opens more doors, deepens your creative toolkit, and makes you far more adaptable in the industry. And today's guest, Evan J. Lawson, is one of those rare creatives who doesn't sit neatly in one lane. Their practice stretches across opera, theatre, music, and experimental performance, and their career is a brilliant example of what happens when you follow curiosity rather than a job title. Now, before I welcome Evan to the studio, we should learn a little bit more about them, but I am going to be completely honest and reveal a little bit of the backstage magic. I never read out the bio during the recording process. It's something that I pop in post-production just before the episode goes live, and there is a lot of words in Evan's bio that I actually am going to not pronounce correctly. So please bear with me as we work through this, and, you know, Evan, if you're listening, I am so sorry. But here we go. Evan J. Lawson is one of Australia's leading queer artists, working at the forefront of contemporary culture as a composer, writer, curator, singer, and conductor. Evan is a founding member and artistic director of the interdisciplinary company Forest Collective. His work as a composer and conductor has brought on collaborations with a wide range of professional, educational, and community organisations across the globe, such as Vox Opera Wien, Festival Aix-en-Provence, Melbourne and Tasmanian Symphony Orchestras, Australian Saxophone Quartet, Australian National Academy of Music, Stonington Symphony, Edinburgh Ensemble, Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, Morivan Philharmonic Orchestra, Tonkunstler Orchestra, and so many more. Evan, thank you so much for joining me on another episode today.
No worries, Josh. Good to be here.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation today because reading through your bio, you are a person of many hats. You have a lot of experience within the industry.
Too many hats, perhaps? Lots of little, tiny, frail, falling apart hats everywhere, yeah.
I struggle myself trying to keep a lot of hats on at the same time. As long as you find the balance of when that hat is on, when the hat's off, I think you're fine.
100%, yeah. And I think it's that thing like, if you're an artist, You just have to do all the things.
Yes. And I think for myself, going through uni and into my career, early part of my career, I was that person. I was like, I'll do anything. I'll do everything, because all of those little bits together create who you're going to become in the industry, and really allows you to sort of get a great broad understanding, especially once you sort of move into that producing space as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like for me, the idea of like in 30 years time, I love the idea of looking back and going, I've learned so much, right? I've taken so much out of life, from knowing how to do a schedule and a budget through to like the incredible opportunities that have been afforded to me of just like, oh, you know how to use Tessitura, or you know how to conduct, or whatever. Yeah, it's just cool to kind of know that you're a person who's very good at multiple things and has gotten the most out of the industry, rather than perhaps staying in one lane, which is great and plenty of people do it. But yeah, there's just it's really rewarding, I guess is what I'm saying.
You are, I think, the fourth person in the last week that has mentioned Tessitura and the importance of how employable it is having that as a skill. What is Tessitura for the audience that don't know what that is?
Oh, what a wonderfully nerdy and specific thing to start our conversation with. So Tessitura is kind of like outside of my creative practice, has been the thing that's probably gotten me all the work that I've had over, in 15 years plus in the industry. So Tessitura is a CRM software that was developed by the Metropolitan Opera, because they found that they had a system for tickets, they had a system for marketing, and they had a system for philanthropy, and then a general, upkeep CRM system. But they thought, what would happen if we put all of these things together and we could see, okay, someone buys a ticket, then they give us a small donation, then they become a large donor. Like it's basically a system that aggregates all of that data into one place, into a CRM. And they created that system, and then they hopefully they're going to sponsor me if I give them all this brilliant content. They then open sourced the software, so it's owned by a foundation in the United States, and it's probably become one of the leaders, if not the leader. It has something like 50% of the market of organizations. So here in Australia, like name an organization, they're on Tessitura. Sydney Opera House, Arts Centre Melbourne, down to the Wheeler Centre here in Melbourne, small organizations, all the orchestras mostly. So it's a tool that I learned, as a little box office seller at uni, to pay the bills. And then it's led me to work like major festivals. It's got me all of my more kind of full-time work, all my more sort of permanent work. And it got me through COVID. I knew how to use Tessitura. I knew how to do refunds. And so I got work during COVID to do that. So like, if you're a freelance artist or stage manager or freelance, any kind of thing in the arts, just having any of those systems, whether it's ticketing or otherwise, like invaluable, right? Because you just go, great, that person can do that.
I didn't expect this is where the start of the conversation would go either, but it seems to be something that's coming up a lot in my life, is about how valuable you can be if you know Tessitura. So listener out there, go learn Tessitura.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure there's a million videos for it and like, easy to access stuff. It is, I will say, incredibly complicated, but like to the point of stupidity.
Yeah.
And, another little diss I'll say as a manager who like deals with it at a high level every day, we're living in a world where technology is just like changing constantly, right? Like there's an AI thing for this, there's a automation tool for that, like so much amazing stuff. Tessitura is this like big, huge, old school thing, and it's taking a while to catch up to the world we've got around us, unfortunately.
I learned how to use Tessie, as we call it, when I first started working at Opera Australia. And I think my favorite part of it is remote connecting to a computer server somewhere, I'm assuming it's at the Opera House for us, that is running, Windows 98 or whatever to be able to then log into it. And as you said, it's very outdated and needs to catch up, but it's used by everyone and it works most of the time smoothly.
Yeah, it does what it says on the tin, whether it does it well, but it certainly does what it says on the tin.
Now, getting back to away from Tessie and obviously, parts of your career, tell us how you first got into, music and the arts, and if there was any sort of defining moment that influenced you.
Well, my starting point was as a kid, like most of us, right? I my best friend played an instrument, so I needed to play that instrument and be better than him. So that was really the starting point into music. But then as I found a creative outlet and got, positive reinforcement that I could do it, that led to experimenting, improvising, writing things down. I always wrote music down, and I always wanted to be a conductor. Like that was something that I just said, that I always wanted to do, because I'm like many of the people in the arts, was one of those kids that like forced my aunts and uncles to sit through god awful plays. I've always been a person that's put things on. So, that's what being a conductor is. That's what being an artistic director or producer is. And so that's kind of in the thread. Like, I'm a musician, I'm a composer, I'm a conductor, but ultimately I love like bringing people together, putting a thing on, being bossy, telling people what to do, but also creating a safe, warm community for people to create art in and for audiences to enjoy art in. So that's kind of, my reason for doing things. And then second to that, as an artist, it's like, what can I do that's different to anyone else, anything else that's happening, right? Which isn't necessarily to say that is the most avant-garde, weird stuff going, but it's just different. It's just I've got a point of difference. I think that's always my approach.
Was there any mentor or person that inspired you to sort of continue down that career, like around conducting and composing?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate to have like incredible teachers. And I think the thing that anyone who's worked for the orchestras or the opera companies in Australia will know what a precarious path it is. Like, as we know with the orchestras, you get a job in that, people don't leave for 20, 30 years. This is just not the opportunities, right? And as a conductor, even less. And as a composer, I mean, don't even, right? It's just rare as hen's teeth. So two of my key mentors, one is like a teacher I spent a summer with in Europe, Matthias Pincher. He's a composer, conductor, and really working at like the top orchestras around the world, really incredible composer. And so spending a summer with him where, he said, you've chosen the two hardest things to do. You're like, yeah, I really have. That was over 10 years ago. And it's still, if not harder, like, it's bloody hard.
Yeah.
And the other mentor that springs to mind, a piece of advice that I got, was from Richard Mills, who's very well-known Australian composer, conductor, recently finished up as artistic director at Victorian Opera. And he said to me once when I was in my early 20s, like, you can, if you're an amazing violinist, you can join an orchestra and eventually become a conductor. If you're a pianist, you can join an opera company, be a repetiteur, and you'll get conducting opportunities. But me, with none of those skills, I have to go the third way and figure it out for myself and find my own opportunities. So a lot of my work has grown from just simply providing myself the chance to conduct or write music, but predominantly to conduct something. So it's hustle culture at its finest.
Yeah. And I think that's any part of the industry, right? Like, you have those people that go through university and naturally fall into the right stage management career that just keeps them going. Or you have those that are doing it the other way. I guess there's no right or wrong way in getting into that, is there?
Absolutely. And like, again, like going back to what I was saying before about the uniqueness of it, right? That gives you the chance to explore so much. Like I often am in awe of stage managers because you can bring this incredible skill to everything. Like you can work in the ballet, you can work here. Well, as a conductor, like conducting ballet and conducting opera, like totally different things, takes a lot of time to kind of prepare yourself for those different worlds. So there's that ability to kind of adapt and jump in and go, okay, I'm working on this big budget, major national tour musical, and then I'm going to go do a fringe show where there's $2.50 and I have to operate and sweep the floor and blah blah blah. Like that's like, to me, that's amazing. That's just great that you get the chance, and in any field, but that you get the chance to see art be created at different levels. Like, what more do you want?
Obviously, having all of those different parts of your hats. I keep calling them hats because I don't know how else to refer to them, because you do so many things: composer, writer, creator, singer, conductor. All of that helps you to be a better creative. And as you said, there's all those experiences that you've learned have come together to build on that. How do you find, in the role that you're in with the Forest Collective, how do you feel all of those things have led you to being the artistic director?
Well, yeah, Forest Collective was formed as a university project. So I studied an undergraduate as a composer. at the Victorian College of the Arts. And part of that, every semester we had to work with a different art form, a different department. And so Forest Collective was born from a collaboration with a visual artist where we created improvised sculpture, sound and visual sculpture. And we just created this sort of series of improvised weird things. And then eventually it grew into like a more formal thing. And so again, like the skills that I've picked up of like, well, I've had to market those things with, once we started doing them when we had money, we're like, what are we going to do with this money? We've sold tickets. And, what should we do? And so at the beginning, we just went to the pub and bought everyone beers, and that was great. And then we thought, well, no, actually, we can build something with this, right? Like we can do something with this. So 2013, we formed ourselves as a not-for-profit, and I've always had an interdisciplinary interest, which permeates primarily in opera. Like opera is interdisciplinary, musical theatre is interdisciplinary, but also cross-genre as well. So we were doing projects that brought in theatre makers, film, like you name it, Forest has done it or tried to do it at some point. We are now a charity, so that's about a year or two into that, which was an incredibly huge process. So again, like how amazing to have figured that out in the world, figured out the tax system, woohoo, to figure out how to operate a charity. And then to what does that mean for us as Forest? We're this collective of artists, but it also means that we can, refine our purpose, ask people to support us and contribute beyond just buying tickets or turning up as community. So I guess it's like adding different levels of obligation. And then within that, it's like, how can we make it as diverse as possible? Can we make sure we have young artists working with established and older career artists? Can we make sure that we've got a diversity? Classical music, as we know, has a massive diversity issue. How can we rectify that in our way? Or not? Like sometimes you program a thing, it's all dead white men, whoopsies. Like, let's just make sure that we acknowledge that and figure that out and, talk about that. So I guess to answer your question, it's just like, a chance to craft my own career. Now, the money doesn't flow from there, let me tell you, but the opportunity to refine your own vision, to create your own work, I think every creative person, in whatever field they are, should attempt it at some point. It's a really hard slog. Like at the moment, we've taken 6 months off because the funding opportunities are difficult. The economy's down the toilet. Like we just all said, why bother? Let's just go into a bit of a hibernation and plan for next year. And I think that's also a really important thing to talk about. And that's something that unfortunately our friends and colleagues in the major organizations can't do. They can't just turn the lights off for 6 months and rethink what their purpose is and what they want to create. So it is also to our benefit to be able to go, well, we're going to put work on when we want to put it on with the people that we want to put it on with. So again, no money in it, but it is really fun. I get to employ my friends and work with people that I want to work with. And if I don't like the opportunity, if it hasn't worked out, I don't have to re-employ them again. I'm the boss. So it's always 50-50 of like what the ensemble wants to do and the company and what I want to do. And I should say that Forest Collective is interdisciplinary. We're a dance company. We're also like a kind of a theatre troupe, is how I think about it, in addition to sort of a chamber orchestra.
You touched on something just before about you're in a position at the moment where you kind of just gone, let's pause it for a couple months while we figure it out. How do you keep everyone motivated? How do you keep everyone sort of focused, even though you're not working at the moment on anything? What's happening behind the scenes to make sure that the group of you are still being creative?
Yeah, that's a great question because again, if by creating a diverse group of people, you've got a diverse group of issues as well, right? Yeah. And we're a large group. So, we've got 2 choreographers, a committee of about, I always lose track, about 10 of us on the administrative committee. And then the group of musicians is about 25. So it's a large group of people to constantly be in touch with. From a leadership perspective, I think about transparency. So often Forest operates within a profit share scenario, as many of us have to in order to put any work on. And so for me, what's really important about that, it's like, okay, well, the least I can do is make sure that the schedule is done, that, the venue's covered by the company, that like all the admin is taken care of and that all they need to do is turn up and play, turn up and create, whatever. And also contracting, this is, oh my God, we're talking about all the really exciting things like tax and Tessitura, contracting artists, having schedules on time, like all just kind of basic stuff, which the most well-funded organizations in the world don't necessarily get right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I joke with a good mate of mine who's on the committee, who's done stuff all over the world, amazing singer, and he's always like, Forest is the most well-run arts organization I've ever been involved in, because we make sure the schedule is out in 6 months ahead of time, because if I'm asking you to do it for $2.50, the least I can do is tell you when it's going to be,
Yeah.
So, and then also it's fun. You get a drink. We throw parties, it's also a space for putting an event on, it isn't just another gig. We really try and make it an event. So yeah, it's about tending that ethos throughout the organization, and that when people come to us with ideas, either external or the internal artists, it's about going, yeah, let's do it. You want to do a 6-hour version of the Ring Cycle with a cardboard box on a roof during Fringe while the audience arrives on a bus? Let's see what we can do. Like, there's
Please tell me that's something that's in the work.
could be, now that I've said it, but yeah, no, not at this stage. But we have, like, one year it was like, let's put a festival on. Never going to do that again, but we did, and we saw it through, and we had an incredible experience throughout that. But yeah, maintaining motivation for people is really hard. And then COVID, of course, inevitably these conversations go back to COVID, because that was like the moment where you go, well, now what do you do with it? And we managed to produce shows here in Melbourne during all the weird breaks between the lockdowns, and managed to do stuff somehow. And we got the most money we ever got. So, we're one of those situations where COVID was quite good to Forest. But seeing people, we had members who had to go into like mental health, emergency care and all sorts of stuff. And a huge challenge for someone who is the voluntary chair of the board. I voluntarily run this organization. It's a huge responsibility, because you care about your friends and your colleagues, but you care about the art that they make and the artists that, we pride ourselves on. We say this cool thing in our manifesto of like the artistically vulnerable, which I think is something that's kind of interesting, of like, how do you give people that space to take risks? Yeah.
There are very few opportunities for those, as you said, artistically vulnerable people. And I think it's really great that opportunity exists, and is also can be sort of free flowing. Like, obviously going through COVID has set you up for this period now where you've gone, well, we've done it before, let's come back and figure out how we do it. What are you as a, collective putting in place? We know when creative people get a little bit too stuck in that creative brain that they need to be able to get out. What are the things you've got in place to take care of them?
Yeah. I guess from a business perspective, it's sort of macro and micro decisions, right? So it is about that. Again, it's just about being organized, setting time aside, saying to people, hey, we're going to do this opera on $2.50. It's going to be 2 really intense weeks. We're going to plan ahead. That's going to be a year from now. You're going to get the schedule, just those little things. And just little boring things of like building in days off into those schedules. We recently did in February, we did a return season of a show, and it was really successful. So we were like, great, let's do a longer run. But that longer run obviously has financial implications, blah, blah, blah. We decided to do it across 10 days, which for opera is really hard. Like, it's hard for singers. It was also a dance work. It was in the middle of the summer, like people are working full time. So just building in rest days was really important. We actually had to cancel a show because of sickness, and we were all like, thank goodness, So being pragmatic, right? Being pragmatic about this stuff of going, at the end of the day, really, does it matter if we do 7 or 6? Just, So transparency around that. And then at a micro level, again, it's that thing of like, it's a profit share. You're not going to get much money. What sort of position are you in now? It's totally fine if you are unable to commit. Yeah. And of course, that can put a spanner in the works, but somehow we always manage to make it work. And like, occasionally we'll get people who, dep in for us. But on the whole, I just have to count my blessings at how fortunate I am that I have this crew around me that just seems to go with it all the time, because there's like, we've done it for over 10 years, and I've only really just started to realize how good it is. I know it's a really stupid thing to say. But my partner's like, you do realize it's like everyone in the group, it's the thing they look forward to. It's like, we're all friends. We're all, colleagues. So I don't know how. I actually can't answer your question. I managed to build this thing where it also kind of does it itself.
Yeah,
And it is also
fantastic.
about delegating,
Yeah.
right? Which any good stage manager producer knows
Yeah.
that you are only as good as your time and your ability. So huge shout out to like our company manager, Kim, my 2IC Jasmine, who does a lot of our admin, our philanthropy, like, and the rest of our steering committee, like where it just be like, someone needs to write this marketing newsletter because like, no, not this week, thanks. So delegation is also, again, really boring, but really important for that I guess loading of mental health.
Well, it's about looking after the people you work with as well as looking after yourself. You know, I feel like we as humans put ourselves last all the time. We always want to help others, but I think something I've realized coming into producing, something I knew that was there in stage management, but I don't think I ever really got to the level of stage management where I was managing a lot of people. So it was always smaller bits as a stage manager. And as I've learned in producing, looking after 37, 38 people on our national tour, like I'm constantly checking in on if they're okay, but then I'm realizing, I haven't actually had a break today. Like, it's those things.
Okay.
It's important to look after you as much as looking after everyone. You mentioned a moment ago about, how you've realized just how good what you're doing is. And I think it comes from that sense of in the industry, if you don't love it, you don't do it. Because if you don't love it, you can't do it. You're constantly finding those battles of like, why am I doing these long hours? Why am I doing all of this work? So I think it's actually quite nice that, not that you haven't realized until now that it's good what you're doing, but it's because you've just really letting it take you in and exploring with it and allowing yourself to grow from it rather than constantly feeling that, is this good? Is this what we're doing good? Rather than feeling that, you've now just gone, yeah, it's great.
Absolutely. And I will say that I am a double Aries with a Leo rising. I am confident and clear, exactly know what I'm doing. Boom, it's going to happen. So I don't really have a lot of space for I'm not the best at like reflecting and stopping. So thankfully the people around me are good at that. But it's burnout territory. Like it is just classic burnout territory of just like, I have this thing, I love the thing, we've got to do it. Oh, it's a success, it's sold out. Let's just add another 5 more shows on. La, la, la. And it's just like, come on, take that 6 months off, An opportunity came up for us to do a thing in December this year. And I was like, here's the thing. And I've written a budget. And, and the committee just went, we decided not to do anything. And you're like, oh yeah. Okay, sure. It's okay to say no. No is a full sentence,
I think that's something that we all need to learn a little bit better. As much as jumping at an great opportunity, hopefully that same opportunity will still be there in a couple months once you guys are back, scheduling things. What goes into, obviously you do so many different projects, but just take one project. What goes into it? Like how, is it the artist coming to you with an idea or is it you going to the artist with an idea? How does that sort of collaboration work?
Within the forest context, it's kind of 50-50 me and the ensemble. Okay. So we often have projects that are curated by members of the ensemble. One thing we've often done is we've picked a theme and we've given that theme over to the ensemble. Everyone's picked a solo piece and we just sort of curate this funny thing that might end up with, Philip Glass, Lisa Lim and PJ Harvey song. And then it's just this kind of interesting program. So sometimes there's that. Sometimes it's detailed curation from my end of a, really specific thing. Obviously, this is without even talking about funding applications, venue considerations, various partnerships, et cetera and so forth. And then our large scale, more kind of larger footprint events, the operas, theatre work, the dance work. We have, so Ashley Dugan is our associate artist for dance. So a lot of that's driven by him, either him coming with ideas or me, saying I'm writing this work and I want to include dance in some way. And a lot of the opera work has been my work. There's a few other pieces in there that are not there, but yeah, a lot of it is my pieces. And so then it's about, okay, well, how does forest sit in that, and what is the forest flavor to it that is more than just proscenium arch theatre, orchestras kind of things. We always try and use unusual spaces, immersive work, that sort of thing. So it's kind of, every project's sort of different. And then when we've had guests come in, it's very much like, here you go, you've got this palette of 20 musicians. It's mostly been music, but sometimes with theatre, go do something, see what you can do. And that can end up in tatters on the ground, or it can work really well. Yeah, depending on the piece. But again, you've got to take those risks. Like we're getting to be so risk averse at the moment in the industry that if the smaller companies lose that quality, well, we're done for. Really are.
I think it's a really great collaboration, and what you give these artists is obviously, be a bit risky, make some bold choices, because if you're not going to do it here, then where else is there really for you to do so?
Exactly right. And that's a really challenging line to walk as a producer, because like I obviously want to give the work life, right? Like I want to pitch it to companies, I want it to have, and a composer, I want my work to live outside of Forest. And, I pitched a thing to quite a high level artistic director recently, and they said, well, why should I take it? You're already doing it. And you're like, well, because I can offer you an audience that has never been to the opera before. But anyway, that's fine. Like that's the perspective you've got. Like we're this engine room of new work that is bringing audiences that have never been to an opera, never been to an orchestra before. That's the holy grail as far as I'm concerned. By all means, if you don't want it, sure, that's fine. But that, there's also a business imperative there for the organization to be stepping up, to hold the rest of the industry to account of like, well, this is what people do want to see. So unless there's some kind of acceptance or change in the air, it can sometimes feel a bit conflicting if you're just, we can be fobbed off a lot because it's very much a group of volunteers like we do when we have funding. It's great, we pay everyone properly, of course, but it can look on paper like it's volunteers. So it's tricky. It's a tricky line to walk.
Shakespeare can be intimidating for artists, for audiences. People often put Shakespeare on a pedestal or try to dumb it down. We're doing neither. We're taking these texts that still resonate in so many ways and handing them to a diverse set of today's most exciting playwrights and saying, what would you do? How would you translate this into contemporary English verse from your perspective, using your knowledge and your artistry? We're here to decolonize and democratize Shakespeare because these stories are for everyone. Visit playonshakespeare.org to find a modern verse translation of Shakespeare and get the playwright back in the room.
John Legend, Sheryl Crow, Elvis Costello, and Alanis Morissette star in the MGM Plus original series, Words and Music. Iconic artists share intimate performances and the stories behind the songs. New episodes Sundays on MGM Plus.
Do you feel like, obviously knowing that the industry is sitting in a bit of a rough place across the board, musicals, operas, dance, all of that we keep talking about being risk averse. Obviously, they know that funding can be quite tough at the minute, so people are less wanting to look at new work, commissioning new work, because it's safer, quote unquote, to just keep doing things that they know are going to sell rather than things that they, would be completely, taking a risk on?
Well, I'm not 100% sure how to kind of answer that, but I guess for my experience, and I'll put on my marketing manager hat where I work at the Australian National Academy of Music, where it's a different thing because we're a training institution. Our funding is a very different model. But still, we put on concerts, people need to come, we need to do a thing. And we've really worked hard at making an accessible ticketing structure, right? So the Philadelphia Opera, if this is a thing you're interested in out there about like accessibility, pricing, and you're in a kind of a legacy art form, even like what we do at Forest is still essentially a legacy art form. People think of it as an orchestra. We get people who've never been before, so they don't know the difference between us and the Melbourne Symphony, right? To them, it's just chalk and cheese. We just happen to do it with a DJ in a bar, so it's all the same. I think it's all the same ticket, right? So the Philadelphia Opera have done this thing recently where everything is a choose what you wish pricing from $11 and in increments of $10 up to $300 per ticket. And they have like tripled their attendance. They've like doubled their budget. Now, of course, we're talking about an American opera company that probably gets $50 bajillion a year from Microsoft or some, Looney Tunes thing. But still, it's like, it is a case in point that if you build in some flexibility, you build in price concerns, what we've noticed at Anam, we've got a sort of a structure where it's like a 20, a 40 or a $60 ticket for our main concerts. What we've noticed is that in the buying behavior, some people will buy 3 concerts for $20 and then 1 concert for 40. Or they might be a donor and they're happy to give a little bit more and they've bought all the $60 tickets and then something's released later and they'll just buy the $20 ticket.
Yep.
So people kind of making these buying habits that have actually lifted the income and have lifted the attendance rate, because a lot of new buyers will buy the $20 ticket, see the product, know it's good, come back and buy a $40 ticket. And I think as marketers, producers, we go, we're not going to do, they're not going to do this and they're not going to, we couldn't possibly. And it's like, no, they will. If they want to come back, they'll come back. And if they want to pay more, people will generally, they know that most people know that we're basically charities. They'll want to contribute as much as they can contribute. So also giving people an opportunity to engage with the company in an accessible way, if that makes sense. It's like, here's $20 ticket. It's really not that risky.
Yeah.
Come back again and pay more if you want, or pay $20 again. That's fine. Yeah, so it's tricky. Discounting is the other thing that's kind of like tricky at the moment, because we're seeing such last minute spikes and everything. So, all the CEOs panic and go, well, nothing's filled, but it fill them. So then you discount, and then all those people that probably would have bought a full price ticket come on a discounted ticket that they buy a week before. So my theory is just hold steady, steady. And you just got to be like, again, I work at a company where I'm probably not going to get fired if the show doesn't sell out as much, So it is a different, particularly in the contemporary musical theatre space at the moment. But yeah, it's bloody weird at the moment. And I think the problem is people are kind of behaving as if it's this oddity. And I'm like, I kind of think that this is what it's going to be for the next ever, maybe, So we've got to learn how to advertise like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think obviously there's a whole conversation we could dive into around accessibility for theatre in all of the ways. But yes, obviously, ticketing price points, as we've seen, have, from when I first started seeing theatre, have skyrocketed. And you look and you go, sure, I see everything else around it has as well, but how can we still make it accessible for those people that do sit in that lower, socioeconomical position
100%.
to still encourage them to be dreamers and be creatives? And you and I have both fallen in love with what we've done because we experienced it as kids. So, still making it accessible to that next generation, I think, is what's really important.
Absolutely. And it's like, can you also just sometimes let people buy the best seat in the house for $50? Like, this is one of my bugbears at the moment. It's like, God, I mean, I'm glad I'm not dealing with some of the budgets of the major organizations, but it's just like, I have worked in places where we'll give 1 row of D reserve and that'll be the accessible price and it'll be the last row of the thing. It's like, well, if someone is coming for the first time to the symphony, as this was an example of a particular orchestra, and that's their thing, and they have this terrible experience sitting at the back and I can't see anything or hear anything, how are you expecting them to then, and then you're going to market to them again and say, buy a subscription? Well,
come back.
Exactly. And I think this is something that musicals do a lot better than the classical music world, because you've got that kind of culture of people just want to see the product, and they'll buy not necessarily based on the people who are in it, or, of course there's some that do, but a lot of people go, Brett, I know Book of Mormon, I know, Hadestown, whatever it is, I'm going to book that thing. But still, it's like we need to be making sure that mum and 2 kids who can't afford to come or whatever gets the chance to access it. It just gives me the creeps to think that in 30 years' time might be in a position where only certain people of a certain socioeconomic situation can access tickets and can access education for art in a particular way, and that's the path that we seem to be walking down at the moment.
Sort of going back to what it was, who were the people that actually sat and watched opera, or and watched these performances?
Yeah,
were people that had money. We're sort of going back that way, and it's terrifying. And it's conversations like this, and conversations continue to be had. Nothing's going to change overnight.
Yeah,
people have to take risks, but hopefully we see a change of that in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and it's like, as we've said umpty-doo times already, it's new work, right? Is a huge part of that, right? It's seeing specific stories on stage. It's engaging certain types of community. And that's across the board of any theatre, any concert, like any performing arts at the moment, because, it's just Netflix that you're up against at the end of the day. But people do genuinely, like in Melbourne, it's just, that people are hungry for stuff. There's no lack of new audiences. And, like the don't even open the can of worms about immigration, but Melbourne's had an extra 250,000 people in the city in the past 3-4 years. If you can't sell it, you know what I mean? Like there's plenty of people out there to sell to. So that's I'm trying to be always an optimistic person. I'll gladly throw plenty of stones at the glass ceilings, but I'm ultimately always it's in the cause of the art form of going, absolutely there should be, a full season of Annie at the Princess Theatre that sells out every night. And absolutely there should be a season of Marriage of Figaro at the Opera House. Do you know what I mean? And then absolutely there should be a weird, wacky thing that, has some funding behind it that gets produced by a major company. Because that's, I think, the thing that artists want to see is that they want to see, okay, if the companies are going to go with risk-averse, comfortable, bums-on-seat stuff, where is that money then going to go in terms of the art form and the longevity of the art form and audiences as well?
I think it's people like you and the Forest Collective that are continuing to drive artist creativity in many ways, and I'm really excited to see where you guys go as a group.
Again, anyone out there with a spare 50 grand, let me know.
I don't know how many. Now, we touched briefly on your sort of work as a composer. And in your bio, you talk about immersive electroacousmatic works.
Yes.
What is that?
Oh, who knows? I don't really know myself. So I guess like you got to think acoustic music, so acoustic instruments, a violin, a cello, etc. Acousmatic is this kind of catch-all term for electronic work that's made that could be, you've got to kind of put like, it could be a sound sculpture. It could be, static sound for a theatre work, like a lot of that could be described as acousmatic work. So sound work that is probably generated electronically, but is presented through speakers, like in a theatre, or that's kind of my understanding of acousmatic. There's probably someone out there who's gone, no! Yeah, so kind of electronic music. For me, my practice in that space is relatively new. So my work, Labyrinth, which was a multi-room, immersive dance opera piano concerto, also had a large acousmatic part of it. So it had electronics throughout the space. So basically it's the story of the Minotaur, Theseus and the Minotaur, and the audience is playing the role of the Athenians who have been sent to be sacrificed to the Minotaur. And Theseus is taking you through the labyrinth, through multiple rooms where we meet dancers, musicians. And in order to create a cohesive sound world, I had to generate electronic music, which was sort of a new thing for me. So it's sort of electronically generated sounds, but also like recording things, me singing, me sort of recording body percussion or weird sounds on synths and that sort of stuff. So it's kind of a bit of a catch-all thing of just electronic music, but not like, it's not techno. You know what I mean? I think people you say electronic music and some people think, oh, cool, you make beats or sort of pop music. It's like, no, it's kind of like ambient music, I guess. Is a good describer.
How do you find audiences' response to taking sort of classical parts of instruments into that, synthy sort of pulsing experience?
Well, with Labyrinth, which sort of is the large scale kind of canvas, I've experimented that on. So we had acoustic, flute, viola, and then the crux of the work is that a piano is the Minotaur. So you can hear this like monster, big, crashy piano concerto thing, but it's in the distance. It's in the last room. So there's also you've got the electronics kind of being manipulated and creating a sound world, but then you've got the piano in like an old school 17th century sound design is over in a couple of rooms away, and you can hear it as we get closer and closer. So kind of interacting all those elements together was really fascinating, because I was operating the desk for it, and I'm not like a sound person at all. And the way that I wrote this music was very rudimentary, very idiosyncratic. But it was just great to be able to experiment just with a very simple mixer, like, okay, I want these climaxes. How can I bring that up in the electronics? Just really simple things that any kind of sound technician would be like, well, yeah. But like as a composer and a conductor, it was kind of like it was the orchestra that I didn't have. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Because we could only afford the 3 instruments and 3 singers. So it just gave me that chance to kind of also be a part of the performance and manipulate the sound and experiment with the climaxes in the sound was really cool to do, because the first time we did it was in a really, really tiny space, and then the second time we did it was in a really massive space. So I was able to just like crank it, which was really cool.
You became the composer, the conductor, the audio engineer. You are just continuing to add to the list of things that you can do.
Yeah, pretty much. I just say composer. I mean, that's really the catch-all of all of that, really.
Obviously, in the world of composing and conducting, you're working with, that live orchestra. You're working with them to balance the sound, where things sit, all of that. But taking that and then adding that extra level of being able to drive it in the room and tweak it that further bit from what's already been created, I think it's a very unique experience for people.
Oh, absolutely. And from a compositional perspective, like I said, like most of my work up until really this piece had been acoustic notated music. And so to then craft a work that had to, from a notation perspective, for all the notation composer nerds out there, obviously it's taking a place over multiple rooms where the pianist isn't in the same room. It was literally like nearly 100 meters difference between where the audience started and where the pianist was. So I had to write it in a way where the pianist could hear a cue from a singer, play the thing, that sparked the next cue. So that the notation had to be flexible enough that still worked for the storytelling. And then the electronics sort of had to be the glue that melded all those elements together. So it was, again, like, how hard do I want to make it? I'll make it as hard as possible. But then through that, I've now crafted almost whole new genre to kind of work with, both within my music, but just in sort of music theatre in general. I don't know of many immersive operas or multi-room operas. So yeah, it sort of was a really excellent challenge, a really, really exciting challenge.
Are you looking at exploring it further within this or another piece and sort of allowing more audiences to experience it?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to tour the work. It's so space dependent. So it needs kind of like a creepy, weird, labyrinthine space that we can get a grand piano in and speakers and blah, 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 blah. So it is a complicated one. So we're looking at, weird warehouses, power stations. It's kind of that vibe. So if anyone knows anything, please write in, because we're just keen to get the work out there. So yeah, it's 2 dancers, 3 singers, 3 musicians, plus a bloody grand piano. But aside from that, it's reasonably doable. Conceiving at the moment a follow-up work, which will actually be a kind of prequel. So Daedalus is this figure in mythology who was the designer of the labyrinth, and he was also the designer, if you know the myth, the Minotaur and Ariadne's mother had a curse by Zeus she fell in love with a bull, and he created a contraption so that she could consummate her relationship with the bull. And Daedalus designed those things. He also designed Icarus's wings. So Icarus was his son. So I'm going to write a work for myself, because I'm also a singer, and it's going to be not so much it's not going to be multi-room, but it's going to be an immersive one-person opera about Icarus. It's kind of be the origin story of Daedalus. So the idea is that work can kind of sit in conjunction with Labyrinth in some way. So that's kind of the next major theatre work I'm coming up. So I've gone very intimate. I've gone one voice, electronics, and one instrument. I'm sort of getting smaller and smaller, because I've just discovered electronics. I can do all this cool stuff, and I don't have to get a 70-piece orchestra together.
And I think it's all more skill building. It's just continuing on what you know within composing and just building on top of that to layer it. And I'm excited for both of these things, so I can't wait to keep following, so I can know when they're going to land and where they will be and experience it for myself.
Yeah, please. Everyone is welcome. Come and hear, contemporary classical music like you've never heard it before, right? That's the idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So obviously we've touched on all of the things that you've done in your career. What are some tools or tricks that keep you organized, keep you on top of the many projects that you're doing, or just things that, you find really helpful that the listener might enjoy as well?
Yeah, I mean, again, they're all thrillingly exciting stuff like, make sure you've got a really clear schedule that everyone can read and understand. Make sure you organize your production meetings and that, everyone knows that they're happening. And, contracts are really important, I think, for obviously any company, but particularly the small ones where money is so tight, and making sure that things are super transparent around who's doing what and when. And building a group of people you can delegate to, because you can't possibly do it all on your own. Even if you're just a producer, you can't do it all on your own. You need to make sure that there's a really clear crew around you and that you trust those people to do their jobs. You can say that about any workplace, anywhere. Just trust people to do the job and let them make their own mistakes, whether they're an artist or a stage manager or whatever.
Yeah.
And a diversity of opinions. So I really make sure that with like the steering committee of Forest Collective, that we've got artists of the group involved, we've got external people, and that we have, a diversity of people in their professional experience so that they can learn, but also, is there this amazing app that all us, millennial boomers don't know anything about that, can save us time or whatever. So that, and then in just the small org kind of stuff of like, you're always building new relationships. Yeah. So it's that without hustling too much, you've got to kind of think that every relationship that you're going into is a new opportunity for the company to grow in some way, just to sell a ticket or to get that CEO to come or whatever. So, there's just a level of amicableness, as if that's a word, that I try and instill. And it's just like, God forbid we have fun. We're putting on shows. Like, this is how they do all these conversations, Tessitura. We're putting on shows. Like, it should be enjoyable for everybody, from the janitor through to the leading lady, right? So that's my number one thing as well, of like, just be a good, fun person, like, don't take it all too seriously, and find work that keeps you empowered and interested and engaged, right? That's what anyone, any field would want, but particularly in the arts, you got to care about it. If you care about the tickets more than you care about the art, well, you might be in the wrong place.
And I think it all comes back to, if you don't love it, you don't do it, because it just demands so much from us. And yeah, if you're not enjoying it, if you're not having fun, step back for a second and just go, is this where I want to be?
Totally. And also, you can also just turn up for your 9 to 5, and that's fine as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be a full party all the time. But yeah, like it's I think that there's also some hangovers of the kind of old culture of the arts of like, do everything all the time, and you've got to care and you've got to marry. It's like, no, it's 5 o'clock. You don't pay me anymore. Bye. Yeah. Sorry. Like,
setting boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what a boundary! What a revolutionary boundary! It's 5 o'clock. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the chat. It's been so fascinating to find out more about you and the work that you do, the work that Forest Collective does. Where can people follow you and Forest Collective if they want to learn more and obviously stay up to date with some of the amazing work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So forestcollective.com.au. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We have a monthly newsletter, action-packed, full of lots of fun things. We're about to launch a big season of activity in January. So we've got a lot of things on the go next year. We do also have some digital work that we created during COVID, which you can explore on our website as well, a digital reimagining of the seminal 20th century piece Pierre Lunaire. I'd encourage people to go and check out on our website. And for me, I'm evanjlawson.com. I'm at Evan J. Lawson. I'm on the gram. I'm on the Facebook. I'm all over the internet. I often post really stupid videos about me complaining about, certain companies' branding, for instance. There's a fun series I have on Instagram. I'll probably get myself in trouble one day, but no one seems to pay any attention. So.
Well, I'm going to go check that out, and I'll pop all those links in the show notes as well for the listener to check out. You've already shared so many words of wisdom, but is there any last minute thought that you want to share?
I'm going to be like super like boomer dad and be like, just enjoy the ride.
Oh, that is perfect. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Josh.
I loved diving into Evan's world today, from the unexpected Tessitura. If you're planning on going and learning more about it, please let me know. Reach out on Instagram or TikTok at Whispers in the Wings. From there to the labyrinth operas, to the realities of running an indie theatre company. It's conversations like this that remind me that the arts thrive on curiosity, collaboration, and of course supporting each other through the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's exciting parts that all come together to make work happen. I hope you've had a wonderful 2025 exploring the incredible world of theatre with me and these wonderful theatre makers. I cannot wait to share more episodes with you in the new year. But until then, as Evan said, just enjoy the ride. See you later.
Hey everybody, this is Jeffrey Scott Parsons. I have just realized that I don't like the sound of my own voice, which is hilarious because I've started a podcast. Here's the deal. When we are younger, let's say 8 to 10 years old, we find filters through which we relate and understand the world. They're usually artistic in nature. Sometimes we find books, music. A lot of people find movies. For me, I found musical theater. Musical theater was my little Instagram filter through which I began to relate to the world. And that meant that the reason I knew about FDR and the New Deal in school was because of Annie. And the reason I could name all 12 tribes of Israel at church was because of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And if I'm being totally honest, a few years later, as I got older, the way that I was able to process the death of my close family members was by watching Ragtime. That's why I wanted to create a podcast, was to have conversations about musical theater that felt more profound than the razzmatazz that we usually use to get people to buy tickets. Because let's be honest, I don't care if you think that musical theater is cool. Cool is overrated. I live in Los Angeles, so I know that cool is very overrated. But I do know that musical theater is important. And those are the conversations that I want to be having on this podcast. Here's how it's going to work. Every week, we're going to pick a show. And for that show, I'm going to have a guest, and we're going to have a conversation about that show, about that musical. So what are the musicals we're going to cover? These musicals can be hits. Maybe they're not. There's no shortage of musicals. Let's say, okay, the first musical to win the Tony Award for Best Musical was in 1949, Kiss Me Kate, right? So now we're in 2019. So if we just did the Best Musical winners, and that's not even including the musicals that didn't win Best Musical, like Beauty and the Beast, or West Side Story, or Wicked, or what else? Funny Girl, Gypsy. I think what will be really fun is that every guest is going to bring something different, and everybody has different tastes in terms of what they like the shows to be. Some of these shows will be some of my favorite shows. Some of them will be favorites of the guests. Some of them might be your favorites. And that might mean that we're covering a musical that I don't really care for. I'm looking at you, Mamma Mia. But it's one of the longest running shows in Broadway history, so who am I to say that people aren't connecting to it? So we'll look at it and we'll at least come up with a hypothesis as to why people connect to this show and why it's bringing them joy. So I want to hear from you. If you have an idea for a show that you would want us to cover, just email us at amusicalpodcast@gmail.com, or you can always contact us on Twitter at a musical podcast. I'm excited to hear your thoughts. Tell me what show you wanted us to cover, and then you have to give me a good reason. It can't just be, well, maybe it can just be, I did this show in my community theater and I want to hear what you guys have to say about it. If that's it, just be honest. I want to hear your reasonings why. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe to the podcast whenever you can, and share it with your friends, because at the end of the day, you're another day older. No, at the end of the day, I want this to be a community where people can come and celebrate this art form in a way that maybe doesn't get explored as much. So please call me Jeff and bring along your show albums, because we're about to get turned up. No, that's terrible. So please call me Jeff and get ready, because a musical theater podcast is starting now.